Thank everyone for joining me. My name is Dan Reed of SCORE Maine. If you're unfamiliar with SCORE, we provide one-on-one business mentoring and educational workshops absolutely for free, just like this one, to small business owners across the state of Maine and nationwide. And I want to thank Sean Banks, who's joined us here today, Maine Community Bank, to talk a little bit about fraud prevention for small business owners. I've seen him speak on this before, and I think it's a great topic, and he does a really good job covering it, especially from the seat of a small business owner who would understand how it would impact them on the day to day. As a branch manager, Sean has a lot of experience with that. I also want to say thank you to the Maine Technology Institute, who is a sponsor of SCORE workshops and their generous support. It helps bring workshops just like this one to our audience. And with that, I will turn it over to Sean to get started. Thank you, Sean.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Glad to be here and talking to everybody about a very important subject today. As Dan said, my name is Sean Banks, and I'll be speaking to you about combating and preventing fraud as a small business. So just a little background about me. I am the branch manager for Maine Community Bank's Commercial Street branch in Portland. I have over a decade of banking experience and have worked closely, unfortunately, with numerous customers who are dealing with fraud, both business and personal. In this, we'll go over what fraud is, the different types of fraud that you're likely to see, as well as some tips and tricks to protect your business. Specifically, when we go over those tips, these are good practices to have for your personal items as well. So don't only apply them to the business side of your banking. Keeping your business and personal banking separated as much as possible is a very good way to prevent fraud. But things get mixed in, and keeping this discussion in mind for your personal banking will help as well. So for starters, what is fraud? Fraud is any intentional act or scheme to deceive another person or business, causing financial loss or gain to a perpetrator. This can come from pretty much anywhere, stolen card info, stolen account info, unauthorized logins, hacking, internal misuse, embezzlement, phishing, smishing, cooking the books. There's just numerous avenues for fraud to happen. And with increasing tech capabilities, those avenues keep expanding. I do like to start with this fraud triangle. It's not something a lot of people have seen, but it is something that kind of visualizes what the underlying causes and operations of fraud are. So starting with the pressure, there's usually
Sean,
pressure.
sorry to
I'm
interrupt,
sorry?
but we actually can't see the slides right now. Do you mind try resharing and maybe that'll help?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. Goodness. Can you see it now?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
All righty. Yeah, just let me know if it does do anything weird. So yeah, this is the fraud triangle. Not something a lot of people have seen, but this is very good to visualize the sources and the causes of fraud. To start, you usually have pressure, a motivation or incentive to actually commit fraud. This can come from financial hardship, lack of opportunity in life, organizational pressure from other members of a group. Then there's the rationalization of committing the crime or the dishonest actions. They justify it to themselves and they justify it to others. And then the biggest one, the one that we actually have the most, control over, is the opportunity. Without all three of these, fraud really cannot happen. So the opportunity is the one that we have the most control over. You can't go inside the mind of a criminal and fix their childhood or get them out of organized crime or fix their, messed up thought process to rationalize stealing. But there's numerous ways to prevent the opportunity to commit fraud. So these are some facts that I pulled from the FTC Consumer Sentinel Network, specifically about Maine. These are as of Q2 in June 30th, 2025. They were published in mid-August. There has been an update in mid-December that I didn't unfortunately see until it was too late to add to the presentation. But something that I like to point out here is that this age breakdown shows that people of all ages are victims of fraud. There's a misnomer that only the elderly or the young and naive can get caught. but everyone has the opportunity, unfortunately, to be a victim of fraud. And then this bottom portion here, the top subcategories of fraud in Maine are business imposters, online shopping, government imposters, and then you have prizes, sweepstakes, lotteries, tech support scams. But really, those top three do make up a significant chunk of the actual source for fraud. Something that I do want to point out is that not all fraud gets reported to the FTC. So these are usually low-end numbers. And it's something that is very important to keep in mind. So Maine had 7,747 fraud reports in 2024, according to the FTC. This seems like a lot, but it's really a lot less than most states, even in per capita numbers. That's up from 7,662 in 2023, which was up from 7,489 in 2022, which is up from 7,091 in 2020. Fraud just keeps going up, 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 and up. It will not get better. 2021 was the worst, but it really is an outlier in that gradual ascension with 9,178 reported fraud cases. Through quarter 2, 2025 in Maine, there's been 6,363 reported cases. We're already 82% of the way to 2024 numbers, and that's only data for 50% of the year. So as you can imagine, we are pacing for a pretty significant amount of fraud increase. Maine per 100,000 people has ranked 43rd, 39th, 37th, 42nd from 2020 to 2024. And through quarter 2 in 2025, we ranked 33rd. So we do pretty well. We're very smart people, or we're distrusting, not sure. Either way, we do a very good job. And, I believe part of that is a very strong local business culture, as well as local banking system built on trust. And programs such as SCORE, who really help bring important topics to, potential victims. So far, since they did release Q3 data very recently, we have dipped a little bit further back to 35th, so we are doing pretty well. It's nice. Pat yourselves on the back. Imposter scams are definitely the by far most prominent fraud source. Recall that 2 out of the 3 of the top categories there were imposter scams. Your online shopping, your fake prize and competition, online banking, blaming, kids who buy Roblox and Fortnite and stuff like that. That's not really well placed. Sometimes it is, but the majority of the times the scammers are going to be imposter scams. So Maine losses in 2024 totaled $29.5 million. The median of which was $350 per loss, which, is pretty low, but I can't think of anybody who would lose $350 to a scam and be, shrug it off as nothing. So it is still something. 2023 had 17.4 million, 2022 had 22.9 million. So, we're already, 2024 was worse than 2022 in pure numbers. But we are going to blow all these numbers out of the water in 2025 once the data is finally calculated. As I mentioned, we are almost 85% of the way to pure claim numbers, as you can see here. Through quarter 2 of 2025, 6,363 reports, $19.7 million in loss. We're trending for all-time highs. And the financial loss there is about 2/3 of the way to the 2024 numbers, with half the year remaining to be total, which is just, nuts to think about. Updated data through quarter 3 that was published in mid-December. We are currently at 7,389 reports, which is only 350 away from 2024, and that's with a full 3 months ready to, still to be calculated. And we have $33 million in fraud loss. So we've already blown 2024 out of the water, which is just nuts to think about. Through Q2 across the United States, we had almost 1.5 million reports of fraud and $7.1 billion in losses. Again, please keep in mind, these are low-end estimates because these are only the ones that are reported to the FTC. Updated for Q3, the reports are at 2.375 million, and the losses are just under 12.3 billion. Some, sites and sources do have the estimated losses at over $40 billion. So fraud really is a very good money-making scam for criminals, unfortunately. We need to be a lot more aware of what's happening with our information. So as I had mentioned, imposter scams tend to be the most common source of fraud, but what is an imposter scam? Someone calling and pretending to be a trusted business person, entity, trying to get information from you, logins, various other information. A good example is someone calling from the bank, asking for your information, a business texting to let you know there was a problem with your order, social security or the IRS threatening to withhold payments or impose fines unless you give them some information that they should already have. Those are very common things that we see. These can be done in every conceivable way to communicate. They can be done via email, they can be done via text, video call, Facebook message, dating app chats, anonymous online boards, face-to-face. They can use physical mail. If you can contact them or they can contact you, they can try to get your information. As you can see on the right side of the screen there, a headline about a finance worker sending $25 million out after a conversation with their CFO. This is a story that circulated a lot, and it's a good warning for the increasing technological capabilities of these scammers. Some gentleman in China was contacted and brought into a meeting with their CFO and various other board members. This CFO told this person to wire $25 million out to a bank account. They established that this needed to be done quickly. They established that this was something that the business wanted them to do, and the worker did it. The catch was that no one in the meeting, other than the worker themselves, was a real person. They used publicly available information, publicly available pictures, videos, voice recordings to create this person or this AI generated individual out of thin air and convince this person to send $25 million. Wire fraud is very, very difficult to recover, so probably wasn't gotten back. And we'll go over that in a little bit. But that does bring me to the simplest and most effective way to prevent any and all imposter scams. Ask yourself a very quick question. Does this make sense? I tell everybody who comes into my office who is a victim of a scam or fraud to really focus on this question moving forward. These few seconds can make you realize that none of this is adding up. You've never done business with these people. You've never known somebody who has that name. Your aunt doesn't sound like that. You've never even filed taxes before. Why would the IRS be contacting you? Well, but does this make sense? 10 seconds, it saves you hundreds of dollars, hours of time. I also think that a business needs to really understand how checks work. There's a lot of, assumptions out there that are incorrect. And so writing checks is something that most businesses will do, and it is a source of fraud that we see in the bank quite often. So you will get your imposter scams outside the bank. In the bank, we will see mostly check fraud. I want to provide some insight into the various types of payment fraud that could occur. Make sure you know how checks work. 2 business days is usually enough time for banks to get word from the Fed via the other financial institution about whether a check is good or not. And this could be, beneficial in that you will see the fraud relatively quickly. But if someone takes a fake check off of your account and puts it into an account at another bank, you may not be aware of it for several days. The 2 business days, it can be a long time. Someone does it on Friday, there's a Monday holiday. All of a sudden, 2 business days is Wednesday of the following week. We rarely see formats that are consistent, whether it be penmanship or the same person making the checks or the check stock itself, signatures. They're rarely consistent when we see them. And that can be something that really hinders our ability to catch fraud at the source. The written and versus numerical amounts, we go by the written amount. It's a lot easier to try and fit a little zero in the number box than it is to write out a full word in the legal line. And then there's various ways to manipulate information on a check. Acid washing is popular. It's when they remove all the pen ink or printer ink from the check itself and then replace it using a computer. They could scan the check, use Photoshop to clear the information, reprint it. But the most common check fraud that we see is stolen checks. And And with that in mind, only those that are signers on your bank account are allowed to sign checks. I have seen some businesses allow employees that are not signers to sign checks. This does really hinder our ability to catch fraud. If that's something that you do or have done, I would really encourage you not to. On that, the signature that you use really needs to be unique. You'd be surprised what we can catch. A lot of times it's very simple as a little loop being off, the angle of the signature being different. People do interesting things with their signatures that, someone who sees signatures dozens of times a day will catch. But those who do just a little scribble or, just a quick, jot down, those are a lot harder for us to catch. So please try to make your signatures unique. Check fraud can occur in a variety of ways and can also look different depending on the opportunity that's presented. These are just like a few examples. There is risk from within your business. Your employees gain access to your checkbook. They can create counterfeit checks. Maybe you have an employee that takes care of the books, creating checks on behalf of your business and even letting them sign, even though they're not a signer, or you use a stamp signature. There's risk from outside. Your checks are intercepted in the mail. Unfortunately, very common. A check can be mailed out to a vendor, and in the mail process, where it goes from you to the mail, the USPS to the vendor, someone can get their hands on that and alter the check. Or you leave your checks in your car, it's broken into, stolen, people just go crazy. Some prevention options here do include just securing your checks in a lockbox, secure mailbox, secure storage location. Really be vigilant when you order checks and when you should be expecting to receive them. We usually give 10 business days, which, is a fairly good length of time. But if it's 3 weeks later and you still haven't gotten them, please, let us know so that we can, make sure that your information is secure. Best way to do it, though, is to just start trying to move away from checks altogether. Your ACHs, your wires, things that are done through, online capabilities are actually much more secure than, checks. Another prominent type of fraud is wire and vendor fraud. How does this happen? Usually through social engineering. They will get your information via email. They will do phishing attacks. And once they have access to your computer, they can learn a lot about your business. They can redirect emails. They can change instructions on wires for payment. And they can really just do a lot to make you think you're paying somebody but it's actually going to a bad guy. An option to prevent this type of fraud is that you can have policies and procedures in place to have dual authorization for wires. One person that might, start the wire or submit the wire, another person to check it. A bank will have those dual control policies in place anyway, but it's always good to start on your end as well. Two people looking at and approving wires can greatly reduce the risk, and banks have also started moving away from allowing non-in-person wires. This does substantially reduce the risk of fraud, albeit at the cost of some convenience. Like I had mentioned earlier, wires are very, very difficult to recover. Once the funds leave the bank, they are quickly received in the person's bank that it's going to. If that person's a scammer, they can also, once again, very quickly move the funds out of their bank to various other places, making it difficult to track, difficult to recover. Invoice fraud is another type of fraud you may encounter, or vendor fraud. You may get an invoice sent to you that you think is from your vendor, or maybe it came from someone committing fraud. You may get an invoice that has been altered. Could be a vendor you pay frequently, but the payment information is new and has been changed and is being routed to the bad guy. Make sure you're paying attention to where you're sending these things. And again, this goes back to having two people review. One person might not catch it, two people probably will. Similar to wire fraud, ensure that your technology controls are in place. Make sure that your emails are secure. Dual factor authentication is huge when you're logging into your password protected devices, and ensure that there are a separation of duties in your business. If someone is able to write checks to vendors, have another authorized signer sign them so that two people are reviewing all those payments out to vendors, and have controls in place to verify if banking information for a vendor has been changed. Never rely on an email. Always call the vendor with the phone number on file to verify any change in payment details. Never call phone numbers that are in emails or on invoices. Those are very, very easy to manipulate. I have seen many, many emails and physical invoices that have been manipulated in that fashion. It takes very little time to call a vendor and confirm the information to be accurate, and a simple call could save you thousands. Another part down at the bottom there is rotation of duties, required vacations. Doing repetitive tasks over and over and over and over again can lead to mistakes. People don't get lazy necessarily, but their brain just starts to get into a blur and numbers start to look similar. So make sure you're rotating the duties between, people who are in charge of your finances. So debit card and credit card fraud, this is the one that most people will associate with fraud in general. Again, it's pretty prominent, but not as prominent as imposter scams. Card machines are obviously the most susceptible to this. An employee or a criminal will place a skimming device on your POS system, and they will use that to steal card information in order to commit fraud. If you've authorized an employee to have a debit card or a credit card, they can use that to commit fraud. Something that I like to point out is that when people think of skimming devices, they are thinking of your, late 2000s, early 2010s skimming devices where they're very clunky, very easy to see. And people have to come back and get the skimming device in order to use the information. Skimmers have gotten incredibly thin and very, very good. I've seen pictures of entire fronts of ATMs that are skimming devices that were secured, overnight while a bank was closed. So a good habit to get into is to just check your POS systems every now and then. Check ones that you're putting your card into. Give it a quick little jiggle. 99% of those will come right off, or you'll see something's weird. So the prevention here is to monitor your financial statements regularly. Make sure you're checking your online banking. Debit card transactions show up right away. Don't leave your card sitting in a vehicle. If your car is broken into, card goes away, can be used. Make sure your machines use chip and PIN technology, and make sure you're using chip and PIN technology or tap technology when you're using your business debit card. Keep your business separate from your personal use and limit who can have access to the account. The more people who have access to the debit card or your account, the more likely it is one of them will end up committing some kind of fraud. So there's various other types of fraud, significantly less common, but they do exist. Payroll fraud, loan fraud, identity theft, financial statement fraud, tax fraud. The list goes on and on and on. Essentially, it's very prevalent, and that's really the message that I want to hammer home, is that if we're careful, we can prevent it, but it does exist pretty much everywhere, unfortunately. So how can you protect your business? First and foremost, know your employees. Complete your background checks. Most crimes are committed against you by someone who knows you, not a stranger. Fraud is no different. Complete your background checks, regularly look at your procedures and who is handling them day to day. Meet you with your employees, get to know them, identify your areas of risk. Having review processes for how you handle the financial aspect of your business will go a long way in preventing future fraud. Ensure internal controls exist. That ties into the previous point. Separate duties so no one person can wield too much power with your money. Continuously educate and train your team as well as yourself on signs of fraud. Take your audit seriously and have a good rapport with your bookkeeper, whomever does your books. Make sure important docs are locked up or securely stored or on your password protected device. And only allow authority to your funds and info to those who really need the access. Limiting your exposure will reduce access points and reduce opportunity. This also goes back to the know your employees section. And finally, does this make sense? Someone will attempt an imposter scam on you. I'm sure everyone's gotten the FedEx or USPS or UPS text about a package being held, or it's en route, or you get a tracking number that you didn't expect with a link. We've all heard about our continuously expiring car warranties. And some of us have maybe been asked to bail out a close relative with like Visa gift cards, which might be a new policy. I don't know. But does this make sense? The answer is usually no. Save yourself some time, save yourself some money. And finally, explore some services that are available to you through your financial institution or your card processor. I'm certain that any bank has the ability to add alerts onto your online banking, or you can do so yourself. You can set these up for purchases on your debit card. You can set them up for ACHs that go out of your account so that you're notified right away if something unusual happens. Awareness is key, but my personal favorite is Positive Pay. I think this is the best fraud prevention service that any financial institution can offer. Positive Pay is an online system where you will enter the amount of a check, the number of the check, and the person who the check is written to, and that system will communicate with the bank immediately. If any information on the check that comes through our financial institution is different, it will be automatically rejected. A lot of people, when they're committing check fraud, try to get cash. This is effectively wiping out any ability to do that. If a check is made out to Sean Banks and someone who is not Sean Banks, if they change the name, if that's in your Positive Pay system and it's the changed name on the check, the banker's going to recognize that because they get that immediate alert and they're going to reject that check. It's going to save you some money. And so if it's deposited in another bank, which is also a common question, you won't ever see it come out of your account because it'll hit the Positive Pay system and get rejected automatically. And it's the same with ACH. Anything that comes out that's not authorized will be rejected. And there's also various insurances available to protect against all types of fraud. If you have a commercial insurance broker, I would recommend talking to them about these and making sure that you're covered. This also applies to identity protection. Many card processors, many card companies will have that as a feature. Always good to take advantage of that. And then a secure mailbox or PO box is also a good prevention technique for that most common type of check fraud, stolen checks. Simple lock and key will save you a lot of money. These are some resources for fraud if you're curious or you want some more tips and tricks. But be sure to talk to your local banker, bookkeeper, card service provider as well. Any business that associates with your money. Make sure they're doing all that they can to prevent fraud on their end. So that is all I have. Thank you very much for attending. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. That was a great presentation. One of the things that I noticed, and I guess a question that I have, is a lot of the steps that can be done to prevent fraud tend to be basically following existing best practices and always, as you had kind of mentioned, doing the sniff test almost. Does this seem legitimate? What are some of the things that, even if you do the sniff tests, might still kind of slip by and people want to keep an eye out for? One of them that comes to mind is that deepfake video that you had talked about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even as AI and our ability to sort of fake who we're talking to gets better, your intuition, your human intuition will pick up on that more often than not. Taking those couple seconds to ask, does this make sense, really will, it will catch most things. But, if someone is determined and they have your information, they hack into your computer or they, steal your identity, that unfortunately isn't something that, you can really prevent without those monitoring services. And even then, those are only monitoring services. They're not prevention services. Keep your personal information off the internet. That's always a good idea. Keep identifying information off the internet. And even stuff that you may not think of. For instance, people use passwords for their devices, but how many of our passwords are something we like, year of our birth, stuff like that. Really re-examine how you lock down your information and what could be available through Facebook or LinkedIn or just various other online services.
Yeah, we had another question here on the chat. Can ACH be completed with just an account and routing number, or what exactly does that process look like?
Yeah, so if they have your account number and routing number, they could do an ACH with a lot of different services like PayPal, but also a lot of services will require the ability to identify microtransactions that they'll put into the account that you're using. For instance, I know Venmo will do this, but and I know that we will do this through our online banking at Maine Community Bank. If you're trying to send an ACH out, you will have to identify microtransactions that have been put into that account. So if you send, they're usually like 5 cents, 7 cents. I'm sure many of you have done it before. And then you'll have to correctly identify those microtransactions. Where it gets tricky, and unfortunately, I actually had this happen to a customer of ours a few weeks ago, is their online banking was compromised. And so not only were they able to add an external account, these fraudsters were able to add an external account that the fraudsters had access to. They were then able to send these ACHs because it wasn't an account that was owned by the people who owned our account. So they could pretty much do whatever they want. Luckily we identified it, we stopped it, we shut down, access to their online banking to be able to do transactions until we got everything changed over. But really, if someone has your routing number and account number, they can do a lot of damage very quickly. And so when you do have a suspicion that that has happened, or even if someone who used to work for you or someone who you used to be close to has that information, we often will recommend or even require that you close the account, open a new one. Once it's closed, they can't use it anymore. Can't hurt you. But the routing number and account number really does pretty much, that's the only thing that really matters for getting a lot of stuff out there, along with your name, which, we assume that they would have.
Another question that we have here is, are intentional bad acts like bad checks and reporting transactions, should they be reported as unauthorized fraud, or how do we protect against those sorts of things?
Could you repeat that? Is it in the chat?
It was a private message sent here.
Okay.
I may have trying to interpret as I think there may have been one spelling mistake, but intentional acts like bad checks and reporting. Should you report? I think what they're getting at is, should you report things like intentional acts like bad checks as unauthorized fraud, and how do you protect against things like that?
Yeah. So definitely report any suspected fraud at all. If you have even the slightest suspect or suspicion that you have been a victim of fraud, or if you believe that you might be missing checks, talk to your banker, talk to us. Like I said, we've seen so much that we can kind of ask, questions that'll either lead to us making a correct decision and shutting down the account, or maybe just kind of calm you down a little bit if it isn't something that's a big deal. But anything that you suspect, bring to us, please. We're here to help you. We're here to serve you as customer service. And, that's really what our job is. So if it is a bad check, report it. If it's something where, you look through your checkbook and you notice, oh, my checks are going from check 157 to check 175. I don't remember writing these middle parts. Report that. That could be someone who just went in and tore out a bunch of checks. If you got your car broken into and, your checkbook was left behind, still report that to us. Let us know what's going on so that we can be more aware, be more vigilant with your account. We have the ability to place alerts. And again, I'm assuming all financial institutions can do this. Main Community Bank is smaller than TD or Bank of America and stuff, but we can put alerts on accounts and on profiles that will allow us to proceed with more caution. Should someone call? Should someone present items from that account or from that individual? So really, as much information as you can give us, as quickly as you can give us, will help us protect you moving forward.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point in there. Just because someone may have left your card or checkbook behind, if they had access to it, there could still be something nefarious afoot.
Mm-hmm.
The person had elaborated a little bit more. So I think what they're talking about is if someone does like like a fake chargeback, or where they receive services and then they charge back and say that they didn't receive services and try to dispute a charge.
So like if your business does something like provides a service and then the customer that you helped does like a chargeback fraudulently. So that's an interesting question. That definitely is more on the business end of things and something that you may have to take legal action about. We would be less involved in that because, if someone does a chargeback, we have to do it. We can't say no. It's just something that we have to do. But if it's something that was done improperly, that seems more like a legal avenue to pursue.
All right, and then another question that we had is if folks have further questions beyond today, can they send you an email?
Yes, please. And is my email somewhere
I
within the
included in the
presentation?
follow-up email.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Email me anytime. Always happy to provide insight as best I can. And if I don't have an answer, we've got a great team of people that I can ask. So I'll be able to get you something very quickly.
Those are all the questions that we have at the moment. I want to say thank you so much. Oh, we had another one come in. Uh, if a person put your name on a legal document like nonprofit bylaws as an example, without your permission, is that fraud?
Yeah, yeah. Any sort of I mean, fraud is just, like I said, an intentional deception where there could be financial gain or financial harm caused. So if someone's putting your name on a document and that could be perceived as harming you financially, that's still fraud. Again, not so much that the bank would deal with, but more something that a legal avenue would be best to pursue. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a very it's a very broad concept, fraud. So, pretty much, like I said, anything that provides financial gain to a fraudster or causes you financial harm, that is fraud.
Thank you, Sean. I did put your email in the chat for anyone who's interested. I'll also make sure that the slide deck recording and your email are in the follow-up email that everyone will receive after this as well. And I just want to say thank you for joining us today and covering this topic. I've seen you present it before, but I feel like I always learn two or three new things every time you do.
Good. Glad to hear it. Thanks very much. Very important. So glad I could present.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming today. And I hope you have a great day. Bye.